The Boston Bruins dropped their preseason opener to the Washington Capitals, and while it was ugly at times, everybody say it with me now, we will not overreact to preseason results.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today, we are breaking down the 5-2 loss to the Washington Capitals in the preseason opener at TD Garden. Three big stories stood out: defensive miscues and Michael DiPietro's shaky performance. Definitely not the debut Marco Sturm wanted as head coach. But we saw Morgan Geekie picking up where he left off, and some kids pushing for NHL jobs, some bright spots in an otherwise sloppy night. The Bruin of the day is Charlie McAvoy, a big positive, his long-awaited return. Before we get into all that, a big thank you for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 2 decades. If you want to follow along on social media, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Please do hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not already, so that you never miss a thing. All right, let's dive into the biggest takeaways from Boston's 5-2 preseason loss to the Washington Capitals on Sunday. Like everybody, I was so excited to see the Bruins back in action. It was amazing to watch their play in their shiny new uniforms. Yeah, the logo is a bit big, but hey, they looked really good out there. The updated logo at center ice as well. And things started off pretty nice, actually. The Bruins struck first with a Morgan Geekie blast after Lindholm poked the puck free. At that point, hey, you thought maybe the Bruins would control the tempo, but it unraveled quite quickly for the Boston Bruins. And same kind of old story as we saw last season. Some defensive miscues that resulted in pretty nice chances against, and the Capitals just straight up capitalized on those opportunities. The Bruins did not do Michael DiPietro any favors, but he also did not really do much to lend confidence in his bid to become Jeremy Swayman's backup this season. 31 seconds after Geekie blasted home that one-timer off a Lindholm poke check, Nikita Zadorov, who is primed for a rebound season, I've even pumped his tires as a potential captain, he coughed it up behind the net, and Sonny Milano buried it to tie things at 1. Shortly thereafter, a Viktor Soderstrom miscue. He forced a pass through Lindholm's skates, ends up on Hendrix Lapierre's stick, and he makes it 2-1 at that point. Zadorov then got beat clean by Sonny Milano in transition. Mason Lohrei lost a puck battle, albeit while kind of getting tangled with the officials. All of a sudden, it's 4-1 for Washington. 4 goals allowed in 14 minutes. Michael DiPietro ended his time in net with 16 saves on 21 shots. Yes, a couple were directly off turnovers, but he also got beat pretty clean. And it was not the assertive showing Boston wanted. He's fighting for a roster spot. We all know the situation. Jeremy Swayman penciled in as your 1A starter. Joonas Korpisalo under contract for a few more years as your incumbent backup. But Michael DiPietro signed that contract extension with the Bruins that will require him to go through waivers if he is to be sent down to the AHL. And the common belief was you put him on waivers, he's going to get scooped up by an NHL team looking to add the reigning AHL goalie of the year. Based on his performance last night, perhaps he's more easily waiverable, but still his upside is there, and it was only the first half of the first preseason game for the Boston Bruins just a few days after the beginning of training camp. However, you had a guy like Zajac coming in to relieve him, and he was actually pretty solid in net for the Boston Bruins. This is a guy that they brought in to add some depth to that position for the Boston Bruins, and he looked pretty good. Simon Zajac, he only faced 6 shots, but he made saves on all of them, and he looked sharp. He made a post-to-post stop on Hendrix Lapierre, looked calm and composed. Not to say that he's in the running for the job, but he very well could be splitting starts with Michael DiPietro in the AHL at this point. Now, Marco Sturm, new head coach, his first game behind the bench for the Boston Bruins. He did warn pregame that the Bruins are still going to make a lot of mistakes. They are processing a different voice. They're processing a lot of information in terms of how he wants this team to play, the kind of style, the kind of system he wants to integrate. So it needs time to kind of sink in, right? Post-game, he said, we were just not smart enough. He's trying to build that new system, but the execution just wasn't there. Look, at the end of the day, preseason isn't about results. These games do not matter in terms of the overall standings or really in assessing what a team could be during the regular season and hopefully in the playoffs. But it is about setting tone. Marco Sturm is preaching simple, straight up and down Bruins hockey and said what we saw was risky D-zone passes and turnovers. Nikita Zadorov is supposed to bring toughness and accountability, but his night was very mistake heavy. And that's not what you want to see from a leader on this team and a guy who kind of struggled early on in his tenure with the Boston Bruins last season. Viktor Soderstrom's fighting for the 7th D spot, making plays like he did, leading to goals didn't help. Mason Lohrei's looking to sure thing defensively. His turnover didn't help at all. Michael DiPietro, if he doesn't shine in his opportunities, don't forget the exhibition season is only 6 games. Then the Bruins may be forced to try to put him through waivers, and they could lose him for nothing. I can't stress enough, though, that it was only a preseason game. Just a few days. The training camp on-ice stuff began on Thursday. They were playing here on Sunday. And, while it was kind of veteran-heavy, the lineup, there were some guys who are going to be regulars in the lineup. Nikita Zadorov, Charlie McAvoy, who we'll discuss later, Mason Lohrei, Viktor Arvidsson, Elias Lindholm, Morgan Geekie. It's still really early in terms of trying to figure out Marco Sturm's system and how this team wants to play. So I'm not panicking by any stretch of the imagination. There were some bad turnovers that led directly to goals. Guys are rusty, and hopefully they will shake that off as the preseason goes on. DiPietro's performance doesn't really allow for much confidence, and Joonas Korpisalo now has a real opportunity to come in and hit his first preseason start and prove that he is the solid veteran they need as Jeremy Swayman's backup. Now, it wasn't all bad. The Bruins did play with more pace than last year. Morgan Geekie scored. Some of the kids really impressed. So let's talk about some encouraging signs from an overall sloppy night here as the podcast continues. Let's be honest, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Thanks again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we discussed some of the negatives, but it wasn't all bad. Morgan Geekie, Viktor Arvidsson, some young players gave Boston fans something to get excited about. Geekie's goal was perfect timing, picking up where he left off from that 33-goal, 57-point career year. And he looked like a legitimate top liner playing with Elias Lindholm and Viktor Arvidsson, who was filling in for an injured David Pastrnak on that top line. Marco Sturm said Geekie came in really good shape. So far, he has been excellent and has looked dialed in all camp. I've got my keeper fantasy league deadline coming up tonight. Morgan Geekie was a guy that I traded for, sending Spencer Knight out the other way. And with it's a salary cap league, so with his new contract, kind of on the fence a little bit, but I'm keeping him. I think he is going to have a fantastic season for the Boston Bruins. Lindholm, Pastrnak, Geekie should still be a very effective trio. And it was nice to see, again, Lindholm pick up that primary assist on the Morgan Geekie goal. With those three rolling as they did to end the season, that should give the Bruins a much better start than they had last year when they were really still figuring out who was going to play with David Pastrnak. Viktor Arvidsson and Matej Blumel really created offense in transition. That was very apparent last night. Arvidsson had a mini breakaway attempt. The Bruins did have pace, unlike last year. And overall, they actually outshot the Capitals, attempted the Capitals 74-42, which is a pretty good shot attempt differential for the Boston Bruins, even in a loss. Of course, it all comes down to goals, and the Bruins were not able to score much, but at 5-on-5 last night, they did have the majority of the shot attempts. 61.1% compared to 38.9% for the Capitals. They had fewer shots, but they had 60% edge in terms of scoring chances, a 52.9% chance edge in terms of high danger chances. In all situations, went up even more. The Bruins had 65% of the shot attempts. And again, that's just having the puck, getting it towards the net. Attempts are not obviously the same as shots, but what it does show us is that the Bruins had the puck, they were driving play, and they were getting the puck towards the net much more regularly than the Washington Capitals last night. Shots were 31-27 overall. Scoring chances were actually 33-18 in favor of the Bruins. High danger chances were 11-8. You add it all up and you can kind of gauge the expected goals. The Bruins had the edge 2.49 to 1.83. Now, of course, all of that is only as good as the how you perform and how you make good on those chances. But the underlying numbers for the Boston Bruins were quite favorable, and that in the long run is going to help. They had that poor stretch where they allowed the 4 straight goals, some bad puck luck there, some bad turnovers. If they can clean that up, the pace that they were showing was actually really encouraging last night. Charlie McAvoy, after the game, when we move pucks quick on the first touch, that results in breakaways, and that's how we want to play. Marco Sturm pinpointed that. There was an article by Fluto Shinzawa in The Athletic pointing back to the Four Nations face-off. There was a play from Canada where the instant the defenseman got the puck, sent it up, you catch the defense off guard, and you're able to create some opportunities there. The power play was 0 for 3. Sturm admitted it is unpracticed. He had only gone over breakout basics. Still, the Bruins did get some zone time, but just could not finish. They had McAvoy out there with Elias, Lindholm, Morgan Geekie, Mate Blumel, and Viktor Arvidsson. So that kind of gives you a look at what the first unit could be. Swapping in, of course, Pasternak for Arvidsson. Interesting that Blumel is getting an opportunity there. The second unit was Mason Lohrei, Matt Poitras, Fraser Minten, Alex Steeves, and Fabian Lysell. Speaking of Minten, very good in the faceoff circle, 6 for 7. Had some physical play that showed maturity and definitely looks like a guy who's ready for the NHL. Matt Poitras drew all 3 penalties. He flashed some skill, but he did get out-muscled at times. He was rocked at one point. Classic good and bad rookie performance. Because he is not, or he is waiver exempt. Fabian Lysell, I thought, looked really nice. He looked aggressive early, forechecking, putting some pressure on the D, skating as he can. He did fade a bit later on and ended up with 0 shots in about 16 minutes of play. One guy who was a real under-the-radar bright spot was Frederic Brunet. Defended well with Andrew Peeke, moved the puck quickly, and broke up some odd man rushes. So when you're looking at some of the kids who are pushing for a spot, Blumel and Steeves were given prime opportunities on the power play. Fabian Lysell did look a bit more mature out there than he has in the past. He was creating some rushes, some opportunities. He did lose the puck a few times. Didn't record an actual shot on net, but he's building on the confidence he gained near the end of last season. Poitras, kind of a mixed bag, drew those penalties, had some skill, but he did get rocked and still needs to develop that physical game if he wants to stick at center. Minten, for me, is the guy that should definitely make the lineup out of all 3 of those guys. All 3 are waiver exempt, so can be sent down without having to go through waivers, unlike Steeves, unlike Blumel. So those 2 could be the odd men out, even though they did not look out of place last night. Now, Sturm's system emphasizes pace and quick decisions. Geekie and some of the kids showed they can adapt, and that was the opposite of last year's sluggish offense. Yeah, there were some defensive miscues, turnovers. Michael DiPietro did not take advantage of his opportunity to impress, but they did push play the other way and had big advantages in terms of attempts, shots, scoring chances, and high danger chances. Minten, Lysell showing they can push for jobs, creating pressure on some of the veterans pushing for bottom six roles, like Sean Corrali, like Michael Essimont. The biggest positive, though, wasn't the kids or the goals. For me, it was the sight of Charlie McAvoy back in the lineup for the first time since February. Let's talk about his night, his importance, and why he's today's Locked On Bruin of the day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for every snap with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. People love using FanDuel because it fits however they like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, it is easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So, if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Not only did I love seeing the new Bruins jerseys last night, it was amazing to see Charlie McAvoy, number 73, back in action for the Boston Bruins, the first time he's been able to play since that pretty scary injury that he suffered at the Four Nations face-off. He's been very vocal about the effect that injury had on him, both physically and mentally. For me, he looked very confident out there. He's healthy, and he immediately elevates Boston's defense. First time back since February after that upper body injury suffered at the Four Nations face-off. Suffered in the first game. He came back and played the next game against Canada and rocked Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. But his season was cut short at 50 games, and his absence was a big reason why the Bruins collapsed last year. Not to say they would have been a playoff team if he hadn't gotten injured, but a healthy McAvoy, a healthy Hampus Lindholm, who knows? Maybe they don't do that big sell-off. Maybe they squeak into the playoffs, and it's a completely different team. As it happened, that's how it shook out. McAvoy was sad to see those guys go, but he's thankful and grateful to be back, and it's good to feel good, he said. Body feels really good. He's stressing patience and effort, not perfection, in his first few games, and the same thing can be said of the Boston Bruins. Overall, he played 21 minutes. He had 2 shots, a block, paired with Mason Lohrei. That could be your top pairing to begin the season, as it is looking like it'll be Lohrei, McAvoy, Lindholm, Peak, Zadorov, Jokiharju, unless things really change here over the course of training camp. Lohrei said he's one of the best defensemen in the world. He loves playing with him, and he is just incredible. And hopefully McAvoy can take Lohrei under his wing and help him thrive, as Zdeno Chara did for McAvoy early on in his career. Look, McAvoy is kind of the backbone of this team. David Pastrnak he's the star. He's the guy that gets people out of their seats night in and night out with his playmaking abilities and his scoring. But make no mistake, Charlie McAvoy on the blue line can have the same effect. He can get us going with his ability to just truck opponents and for his puck carrying abilities and trying to make something happen in the offensive zone. When he's healthy, as he is, he gives structure to Sturm's system. He can steady Mason Lohrei and drive offense from the back end. His emphasis on playing fast and simple echoes Sturm's philosophy. Don't overthink it. Keep things simple. Keep things fast. catch the opposition off guard. Yeah, he wasn't perfect. Nobody on the ice last night was perfect for the Boston Bruins. He was caught up ice once. Timing is still a bit rusty, but that's expected after 7 months out. It's expected for guys who finished the regular season and who have not played NHL action in 5 months. For him, it's even longer, so we can cut him a bit of slack here as he gets up to speed. So today's Bruin of the day is Charlie McAvoy because Boston's chances this season, I don't want to say hinge on him, but he is the glue holding the defense together. We all know Pastrnak can score. At his best, Jeremy Swayman can save. McAvoy is the glue holding it all together from the blue line. His presence changes the team's ceiling. And seeing him back was the best moment of the first game of the preseason for me, aside from Morgan Geekie's fantastic goal. Look, one of the big storylines this season is repeat of last season or redemption, directly tied to McAvoy's health and leadership. If he's all right, the Bruins definitely have a chance to bounce back. Overall, Boston's 5-2 preseason opening loss to Washington highlighted both flaws and promise. Defensive breakdowns from Zadorov, Soderstrom, compounded DiPietro's missed opportunity to prove himself, putting early pressure on Marco Sturm's system. But Morgan Geekie scored. Viktor Arvidsson did not look out of place, driving pace. And young players like Fraser Minten, Frederic Brunet impressed. Same with Fabian Lysell, Matt Poitras to a certain degree. The night's biggest win, though, was Charlie McAvoy's return. A reminder that the Bruins' hopes are dependent on one of the best defensemen in the NHL, and a big reason why they struggled last season. The preseason opener was far from perfect. That should not be expected at this point. Next up, they head to Madison Square Garden to face the Rangers on Tuesday night. Tomorrow, we'll preview that game, continue tracking roster battles, bring you all the latest on the Boston Bruins here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, because that's what we do. Your team every single day. Please do subscribe to the podcast if you have not already on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Follow along on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, at Locked NHL, at Ian C. McLaren. Please do rate and review the podcast. And also check out the Locked On NHL podcast as your second listen. League-wide stories from our local experts. All the coverage you've come to expect from Locked On, your favorite team every single day. Thank you again for checking out the podcast. Please become an everydayer and take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.